Good afternoon. Sean, was that loud enough for you? Must have been loud enough. You can't hear anymore. All right. Welcome to the May 19th meeting of Rotary Club of Des Moines. I am President Catherine Staub, and we are delighted to have you here today. Lynette Rasmussen is going to give us a moment of inspiration and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and four-way test. Lynette?
Good afternoon. I don't know if any of you sat around Thanksgiving table or somewhat where you get a card that says if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be? Well, I would always pick Benjamin Franklin. I just think he would have been a hoot. You know, I grew up with the almanac and so on. So when I looked at where a speaker was and we have a person of justice to speak with us, so I'm going to give you some words from Benjamin Franklin and then follow it up with one other one by Paul Harris. So Benjamin Franklin says, "Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are." And you think about his time and what that might have meant. You know, it's interesting. Okay, and then to Paul Harris, because I think we're going a different direction today in our wonderful presentation. Individuals and nations owe it to themselves and to the world to become informed. So with that, let's say Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And now greet your fellow Rotarians. Today we welcome one guest. If you would please stand as we introduce you. Mary is a guest of Kent Zimmerman, and Mary is a Des Moines and Rotary Club member. Mary, welcome. Happy birthday to Corey Kelly today. He's not in the room with us, but if you happen to see him, be sure to wish him a happy day. Harvey Freeds now of our Golf Fellowship has an announcement. Harvey?
Thank you, President Catherine. This is a picture from last year's golf game, and I believe this was on number 15 at TCI Golf Course. And when we were playing there, we were playing best ball from the tee shot, and I believe this was Brian's. If you go back one picture there, this was Brian's shot. He was within a club length of the pennant there. So congratulations, Brian. And we had a pretty good fun day with a lot of sunshine and a lot of fun with a lot of friends. Our Rotary Classic Golf event this year is going to be on June 10th. And we're going to start at noon at the same golf course, the TCI Golf Course in Polk City. $75 per player. You pay for the when you go to the pro shop just before you come in to play. There will be mulligans. We will be raising funds for the Rotary Foundation. If there is a 24-hour cancellation policy. If you need to cancel, that could be a problem. We're not going to have Rotary this week. I don't think Peter's going to be in town. But somehow, if you're going to cancel, you have to figure out how to get a hold of me. There is a sign-up sheet on the table. Please take a look at that and come on out. The next picture. Most of you in this room are the best at what you do, and most of you like to surround yourself with the best people. And these are some of the best people that I know that like to play golf, and they'd like to surround themselves with the best of you. So please consider this, come on out and have a fun day with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. And hopefully lots of you will sign up for that June 10th golf outing. All right, and at this time, Tim Lilwitz, Program Committee Chair, is going to introduce today's keynote speaker. Tim?
Thank you, President Catherine. Good afternoon. We are privileged this afternoon to be joined by the Honorable Ramonda B. Belcher. Judge Belcher is a District Associate Judge here in Polk County. She was appointed on August 20th, 2010, becoming the first African-American female judge in the state of Iowa. She's presided over criminal, juvenile, and small claims matters since being on the bench. She currently presides over juvenile dependency and delinquency cases and serves as the presiding judge for Polk County's Family Treatment Court, a therapeutic, peer-based court designed to assist parents with achieving sobriety, maintaining recovery, and reunifying with their children. And I'm sure this is something we'll hear more about today, as her presentation is entitled Compassion Fatigue. Prior to her appointment to the bench, Judge Belcher was an assistant Polk County attorney, prosecuting juvenile, criminal, and civil matters during her 15-year tenure. She was born in Plymouth, North Carolina. She earned her Bachelor of Arts degree with honors from Howard University in 1990, and followed by her Juris Doctorate degree from Drake University Law School in 1995. Judge Belcher has received a number of awards and recognitions for her commitment to the service of her legal profession and to the community. Just to name a few, in 2008 she was awarded the Gertrude Rush Award by the Iowa Organization of Women Attorneys and the Iowa National Bar Association. She had the distinct honor of delivering the commencement address for her alma mater, Drake University Law School, in 2011. And she was presented with the History Makers Award from the African American Museum of Iowa and a gubernatorial proclamation in September of 2011. Most recently, she was recognized as a 2020 Woman of Influence by the Des Moines Business Record. Her trailblazing accomplishments have been recognized on the floor of the 116th United States Congress. Judge Belcher remains active in her community, active in the bar and in the judiciary, and strives to make a difference. She conducts training on being trauma-informed to help the judiciary and other disciplines reduce the re-victimization of those who have experienced trauma. She has served on numerous committees focused on addressing racial disparities in the juvenile justice system. She is also an adjunct professor at Drake University Law School, and in her spare time, which doesn't sound like she has a lot of it, she serves as a mentor and is an avid dramatist. Her mantra is know your purpose, follow your passion, and live your dream, something I think that's very applicable. Join me in welcoming Judge Ramonda Belcher.
Thank you, Tim, for that introduction, and thank you all for having me this afternoon. It's truly a pleasure to be here. I appreciate your patience and my availability and my willingness to come in this day and time. So again, thank you all so very much. As indicated, I'm going to talk about compassion fatigue, and I have several objectives. First, I want to talk about and define trauma. It is very difficult to talk about compassion fatigue without recognizing, understanding, and identifying trauma. So I want to talk about trauma. And then I want to identify how we all can be trauma informed. How can we be better at managing our own trauma, and certainly trying not to re-victimize those who have been a victim of trauma. And then I want to talk about this professional quality of life scale, the ProQual. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that assessment. So I want to talk about that assessment and have you assess your own compassion fatigue. On the tables, you will find a handout. It is the actual assessment. I'm hopeful that we'll have time on the back end for each of you to have an opportunity to look at that. Don't do it just now, let's wait. And then hopefully we'll get to that. And then I want to just talk about how can we be resilient, right? How can we not fall victim to compassion fatigue and continue to have compassion and empathy for those that we come in contact with? Most of us have some responsibility either to the public, to others, to even family members that would place us in a position of being of service or being a helper or being a provider. In all of those instances, we all may come in contact with someone who has experienced trauma. So what is trauma? Trauma is identified as a psychological response to violence or any adverse event. And just think about that for a moment. There's been a lot of violence. There have been a lot of adverse events that have occurred recently. It can be experienced or witnessed, something that is physically or emotionally harmful, threatening, and it has lasting adverse effects on an individual's ability to function, their physical, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. All of those things are affected when a person experiences trauma. And I would say that all of us in this room have experienced some level of trauma, some perhaps more than others and maybe more than most. Everyone that I see that appear in my courtroom have experienced some level of trauma. Most, if not all, of the individuals I see have experienced either substance dependency, domestic violence, mental disorders, homelessness, a number of things and experiences that are traumatic. And if we don't provide the services to individuals to adequately address the trauma, then we will find that trauma is manifested in ways that it comes out in behaviors. So what causes trauma? Trauma can be caused by exposure to violence, physical or sexual abuse, any neglect, any natural disasters, and I think we can think of quite a few. I mean, the derecho, the weather, the tornadoes, any accident, a car accident, can be a traumatic event. Anything that induces powerlessness, fear, recurrent hopelessness, or a constant state of fear or alert. I think we can just say that being in the midst of a pandemic is traumatic, right? Because we all have experienced something that is different than what we've ever known before, and how do we get to a place of normalcy, or how do we take care of ourselves in experiencing this trauma that we have endured? Trauma is also caused by discrimination based on race, gender, poverty, sexual orientation, and trauma can be caused by the betrayal of a trusted person or institution. So I want you to just think for a minute about the individuals that you come in contact with, be it the public, however you serve anyone, whether you serve your family, whether you whether you are a caretaker. Anytime any of us experience some loss, any loss is traumatic. Loss of a job, loss of a spouse, loss of a pet. Anytime you're looking at changing your professional status, let's say you are thinking about retirement, you are going to experience some loss in some sort of a way. So anything that you or we have experienced can be a traumatic event. And my heading is compassion fatigue, because I want us to understand that regardless of whatever position we find ourselves in and however we impact with individuals, if we have any contact with someone outside of ourselves, most likely that person, in addition to ourselves, have experienced some level of trauma. And we need to be aware of that so we, again, can take care of ourselves and our own needs, and certainly don't re-victimize those who have been victims of trauma. So how to be trauma informed? It is important to be trauma informed so that, as I try to just impress the importance of taking care of ourselves first, but also making sure that we're not re-victimizing others. And one way to be trauma informed is just to be aware and be sensitive to the needs of others, to the experiences of others, to the trauma that someone else has experienced. Make sure that we understand how individuals' reactions or behaviors may be a result of the trauma they experienced, may not have anything to do with the situation, but it may be them being reactive to whatever traumatic experience that they have endured. And being aware and attuned of our own trauma and how we react, and how either your interaction with someone else or with each other, how your reaction also may be triggered by your own trauma. And I know most of us don't like to talk about trauma and what it is that makes us uncomfortable, but as I said, I believe most of us have experienced some level of trauma, and first we have to acknowledge it and be willing to talk about it and accept it and figure out how do we move from that, how do we manage the emotional and mental toll that the traumatic experience may cause. So be purposeful. Make sure you have a purpose in directing how you interact with individuals. Be patient, be grounded. We don't know when you interact with other people, whether it's a service or a family or a colleague or someone at the grocery store, you don't know what their life experience has been. You don't know what their day has been. You don't know what they just came out of. So if we can just be more patient with individuals, understanding that there are a lot of people who have suffered some level of trauma, and if they're not in a position to address it, it is manifested and made in ways that may look like something else. It may look like they are not being friendly. It may look like they are being negative. It may look like they're not being cooperative. It may look like they don't want your help or your assistance. So just be mindful that anybody and all the people that we come across have experienced some level of trauma, and that may be directing their behaviors and not those other things that you may perceive to be the cause. Start looking at how we can do things differently. How can we make sure we adopt practices and procedures that really help to alleviate re-victimizing people? And I know a lot of you may come from different backgrounds in your professional work and areas, but I'm sure that there's something all of us can take away from what we can do differently when we interact with individuals, and how we can change that interaction and our practices and procedures to make sure we are more cognizant and aware and attuned with what that individual need may be to address and help them be able to work through the traumatic experience, whatever that is that they may have endured. And then it's necessary to be trauma-informed because we want to avoid being a threat. We want to avoid re-victimizing individuals. And it's so important that when we recognize trauma and we understand trauma, it helps us to be in a better position to be more informed and understand that there may be something else for which you don't see, for which you don't know, that individual may have experienced that causes them to react and respond and have a certain behavior. So I just want you to be aware of that, because as we interact with individuals, as we experience trauma, we may get to a point whereby we become compassion fatigue, and that doesn't serve us, and it doesn't serve the public. If you end up in a position of service, it doesn't serve a family member if you're trying to support or help or assist them. So that's why it's so important for us to be attuned and to make sure that we are aware of trauma, that we become trauma informed, and what we can do differently to help protect our own selves and certainly help impact and make things different for those who are impacted. So the Professional Quality of Life Scale, the ProQual, is a 30-minute self-report measure, and it looks at the positive and negative aspects of helping or caring for others. So how many of you are in a position where you provide care, assistance, a service? Can I see a show of hands if you are in a position of helping someone or providing for someone? Okay, so most of us in the room, right? in some way provide some service or come in interaction with somebody that we have to impart a service or fulfill a need. So I think all of us in our day-to-day walk are in a position where we are helping someone, we're caring for someone, we're providing a service, we are of public service to individuals that we may interact with. So this report or measure is just a measure, and it is not a medical test, it's not a psychological test, but it is a proven measure of compassion, satisfaction, and compassion fatigue. And burnout and secondary trauma are subsets of compassion fatigue. So as we get into that, I want to talk a little bit more about that report. And then if we have a few minutes, I want to give you all time to take a minute to take that self-assessment. So that assessment divides compassion, satisfaction, and compassion fatigue in two separate distinct areas. When we talk about compassion, satisfaction, what brings us, allows us to have pleasure? What do we have positive coming from helping or assistance or providing some aid or service to others? And it may be related to altruism, we just want to do good and be good, some belief about ourselves, providing care, working with colleagues. How are we even helpful in interacting with the people that we work with and we see on a daily basis, understanding that they too might have experienced some level of trauma and their behavior or their reaction may go back to whatever traumatic experience that they have had. So this measure really just breaks down both compassion, satisfaction, which is all the positive things we get from helping others, from making a difference, from having an impact, from making somebody else's day, from making the world better, from making whatever it is that you do in life, making it better than where you found it, right? For assisting someone that needs assistance, from if someone just needs someone to sit and visit and talk to, providing that to that individual. So anything that we get pleasure and enjoyment out of, that is compassion, satisfaction. So it brings us some pleasure, it brings us some joy. On the other end of that, however, is compassion fatigue. And that is sometimes by giving and giving and giving and helping and assisting and providing, doing all those things for someone else, it may cause us to feel like, I'm just tired. And all of the trauma that they've experienced and all of the things that they've added to you and shared with you really starts to be heavy upon you. And how do you try to move past that? For me, in my professional capacity, as I indicated, every day I see people who have suffered some level of trauma. And every day I hear the worst of that person's day, or the worst of that person's decision that they've made. And oftentimes it's very traumatic, not just the trauma that they've experienced and how they find themselves before the court, but what they have to endure or what they have endured and the decisions that I have to make and the things that I hear on a daily basis, victimization, crimes against youth being neglected, parents being abused, children being abused, all of those things are just, day in and day out, on a continuum. That's what I hear, and that's what I address every day. So it's important to understand compassion fatigue, and those are like the negative aspects of what we do on a daily basis. Whatever it is that you do, if there's some negative aspect, it's the overall lessening of compassion for the human condition. So at some point, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we just either check out, tune out, turn it off, or we're not as open, as compassionate, as caring, as willing, right? Because we've done it so many times before, over and over again. And if we're not taking care of ourselves and addressing that compassion fatigue, then that's what we get. We become fatigued, and we're not as caring and open as we would want to be. So it may be related to work and working with your colleagues. Maybe related to what you think and believe about yourself. So compassion fatigue is broken down to two different areas: burnout and then work-related traumatic stress. Burnout is just inefficacy, hopelessness, feeling overwhelmed. It's like you can no longer impact whatever it is that needs to be changed. You can no longer sit and listen to another person share, the worst of their day. You can no longer drive someone to the grocery store because you have things that you need to do of your own. You can no longer, go and sit at a nursing home and hold somebody's hand and listen to them talk about things that you can't or don't relate to. You just can't continue to be in that position to help or assist or provide a service because so much of what you've inputted have now caused you to be fatigued and their compassion and your level of compassion to be fatigued. So it's an emotional drain. It is an emotional drain, working long hours with few rewards. And just being in a place where you need to take perhaps a mental health day, or we need to take a mental health day, because we have to really be in tune to what we're feeling, what emotions are we experiencing based on all of the things that we do and the people that we contact on a daily basis. And then the work-related trauma, traumatic stress, goes along with that. You can be the person who was directly affected by the stress or the traumatic event, or it can be secondary trauma, exposure to an event that someone else may have experienced. So as the other slide referred to, trauma is not just what we experience, but trauma can be caused by what we hear, what we see on the television, things that have happened. I think about Katrina and how I was just I think about 9/11. 9/11 and Katrina were two instances that I was far removed from, but the impact of that and how it impacted me and how it just kind of grabbed me and I couldn't turn away from it. Locally, the derecho and just the violence that's occurring in our nation, all those things, even though we may not be directly impacted by it, hearing about it and having empathy and compassion for those who have experienced it directly can cause us to have compassion fatigue. So it's so important that we understand what trauma looks like and recognize it's a whole slew of things that causes trauma, and that we can understand and be more trauma informed and more aware when we recognize that people may have experienced trauma, and that is what's causing the behavior. So I don't want to just talk about the fatigue without giving us some way to work through that. But before we do, I want to talk about these complex relationships. So we have work environment, we have client environment, and we have personal environment. And while we are interacting with people on those different levels, you can see how we may be fulfilled in those areas. We may be fulfilled in our personal lives. We may be fulfilled working with clients on a daily basis and providing a service. We may be fulfilled in a work environment, have great peers that we work with and great colleagues and everybody's doing well. But all of those different experiences and different relationships can cause us, however, to become compassion fatigue. And if we don't take care of ourselves and address that compassion fatigue, then we may find ourselves either being frustrated, becoming angry, or being just exhausted. Being exhausted, and then that exhaustion leads to being depressed. That depression can lead to other areas such as, back to, being traumatized. And it's just so important that as we continue to walk and grow and move and make different transitions in our lives, that we recognize the many things that cause trauma, and that how we can address that in our own lives so that we can have more compassion satisfaction as opposed to compassion fatigue, and really find ourselves on the in that red area where we're traumatized by work, we're traumatized by the secondary exposure, or there may be some primary exposure that causes us to be traumatized at work and have that compassion fatigue. So I don't want to just give you all the negatives, but before I move on and transition, I want to just highlight some of the things, some of the symptoms that can be reflected if you are experiencing compassion fatigue. You can be tired, fatigued, loss of interest. You can impair your immune system. You can have eating disorders, job dissatisfaction, low morale, low job performance, poor self-care, chronic physical ailments, substance abuse, heart failure, stroke, depression, and conflicts with colleagues and staff. So if you find that you or someone that you interact with have any of these things, it could be caused by being compassion fatigue. Could be caused by the level of trauma that they may have experienced personally, or the level of trauma they have witnessed, or the secondary trauma that they have witnessed. So you just want to be aware, again, that being trauma informed, so we know what compassion fatigue looks like and how it can be manifested based on a person's individual experience. So how can we move from being compassion fatigue and making sure we have the capacity to continue to be compassionate, to continue to show empathy, and continue to have positiveness and joy out of whatever it is that we do on a daily basis? One of them is to manage stress. So stress is one of the major causes of being compassion fatigue, because all of that trauma has triggered some stress response. And research tells us that the stress response can trigger your hormones in the body that causes many of those things that I had on the last slide, even PTSD and other chronic disorders. So it's important that you provide some personal productivity skills, that you can have some physical activity, that you present moments of being aware, that you have a balanced life, whatever that looks like for you. It may look differently for each person. That you have some conflict resolution skills. A lot of people like to journal, just write. Some people like to mediate. For me, I tend to spend my lunch break walking. I didn't realize how much I sit. I sit either back in my chambers, which is seldom, or on the bench when I'm conducting a hearing. And it's just important for me to get up and walk and move and clear my head. So before I would sit down to eat, my lunchtime is spent walking. And it really helps me to move and, to be active. It really helps me to clear my head and just separate myself from my day of the last case. Oftentimes, people will ask me, well, Judge, how are you able to, not kind of internalize all the things I hear on a daily basis from the families that I hear about? And it's so important that I can't hold on to the first case, because now I have the second case and the third case. And if I'm not present in the second and the third case because I am fatigued, or I am still holding on and thinking about a decision that I made, then I'm not doing that next family justice and giving them my undivided attention. So I think it's a learned skill that you recognize that you have to, at least in my work capacity, I have to be present, make a decision, move on to the next case, be present, make a decision, and move on. This tree is an example of, on the left side, really shows how trauma and compassion fatigue can be, what it can look like. And then the right side shows us how we can really be resilient, have the compassion that we need, and deal with the compassion fatigue. So a lot of pain, poor sleep, headaches, depression, flashbacks, stress, diabetes, chest pain. Some of the trauma that a lot of the people that I see, and perhaps many of us may experience, may be caused by some loss, may be caused by poverty, may be caused by discrimination, racism, some kind of disaster, fleeing from a home country, maybe some family history, maybe homelessness. So trauma can be caused by a number of things that we see at the root and is manifested by everything on the branches. But in order for us not to have the compassion fatigue and to be resilient, those things at the bottom really helps us to maintain our own level of compassion and to be trauma informed. And that is having social connections, having knowledge and understanding, having therapy, having healthy lifestyles and primary care, having supportive groups. Those are the things at the root that will really help us to be empowered, to be in recovery, to have hope, to have peace and patience and fulfillment and growth and self-esteem, and all the things that we need to show compassion to all the people that we interact with on a daily basis. So I want you to take a few minutes now to look at that model that's on your table. And as I indicated, it's just a measure. So what I want each of you to do, I want you to take a few minutes to take a look at that, and it just asks you to give a number either never, rarely, sometimes, often, or very often, and just in your daily capacity, as you interact with either the public, you provide a service, you interact with your family, in your daily capacity, could you just put a number beside each of those 1 through 30 questions or statements? And what I will do, I'll just say them out loud for the recording. 1 is never, 2 is rarely, 3 is sometimes, 4 is often, 5 is very often. Am I happy? Am I preoccupied with more than one person that you assist, help, serve? Am I satisfied from being able to assist, help, or serve? I feel connected to others. I jump or I am startled by unexpected sounds. I feel invigorated after working with those that I help assist. I find it difficult to separate my personal life from my life as one who provides a service or help. I am not as productive at work because I am losing sleep over traumatic experience of a person that I assist, help. I think that I might have been affected by the traumatic stress of those that I help, assist, or interact with. I feel trapped by my job as whatever your profession may be. Because of my assisting, helping, or serving, I feel on edge about various things. 12, I like my work as whatever it is that you do. 13, I feel depressed because of traumatic experiences of the people that I serve, assist, or help. 14, I feel as though I am experiencing the trauma of someone I have helped, assisted. I have beliefs that sustain me. I am pleased with how I am able to help with whatever it is in the techniques and protocols. I am the person I always wanted to be. 18, my work makes me feel satisfied. 19, I feel worn out because of my work as I have happy thoughts and feelings about those that I help, assist, and how I could help them. I feel overwhelmed because of my, whatever your workload may be. It seems endless. 22, I believe I can make a difference through my work. I avoid certain activities or situations because they remind me of frightening experiences of the people that I help, assist, or serve. 24, I am proud of what I can do to help, assist, or serve. 25, as a result of my helping, assist, or serving, I have intrusive, frightening thoughts. 26, I feel bogged down by the system. I have thoughts that I am a success as a helper. I can't recall important parts of my work with trauma victims. 29, I am a very caring person. Or 30, I am happy that I choose to do this work. So I want you to just take a few minutes, and if we don't have time to do it today, I want you just on your own time. If you are interested in just where you find yourself, and if you are in danger of being at a place of being burnout or having a stress-related trauma, or that you may have some compassion fatigue, I want you to take a few minutes and to review that. On the back side of that, I do have, on the back side of the survey, I have included what the numbers entail. It shows you how you can score. It's a little complicated, but I'm certain everyone can read it and be able to score each of those: compassion, satisfaction, your burnout, and your secondary traumatic stress. And it really highlights what and where you may find yourself based on that scale. And for compassion, satisfaction, if you score below 40, it may indicate that there is some problem with your job or whatever it is that you're doing, however you are assisting or serving others. Or it may indicate that your pleasure may be derived out of something outside of your work experience, outside of providing the service for those individuals. With the compassion, fatigue, or burnout, if you score below 18, that indicates that it's positive and that you feel like you are effective doing your work or whatever it is in terms of providing a service. But however, if you score 57 or above, you may want to think about what is causing you to feel that compassion fatigue. And then compassion fatigue and secondary stress, if you score above the 57, you might want to think about what's causing you to experience that. So I see that my time is getting close to drawing near, so I just wanted to give you some resources and some credits for the information that I provided you this afternoon. Please take the time to look at that assessment and just see where you are, and just think about how you may have experienced trauma, how trauma may have been present in your own life, and how all those people that you interact with on a daily basis, how they too may have experienced trauma, and what you can do to be trauma informed and prevent you and others from being compassion fatigued. So again, I thank you for this opportunity to speak before you. Thank you.
We have time for maybe one or two questions.
Any questions? Yes.
Colleen, you go first.
Judge Belcher, you talked about taking walking breaks and trying to stay in the present moment. What are some of your other coping skills and ways that you decompress after a day or on the weekends? I'm just curious.
My question is, how do I decompress in addition to walking and taking that time? I really try to have work-life balance, and I know that's a big word, and some people find it hard to achieve. But I try not to. Before COVID, I didn't take work home. I really separated. That didn't mean I left at 4:30. I might have stayed to 7. That's the latest I'll stay. But I make sure I do my work at work, and I really be able to leave it at work when I leave for the day. It's so important to have that work-life balance, and walking really helps me to just recenter myself and to have joy and things that I enjoy doing outside of work. Yes, sir.
Colleen.
Oh, was there another question?
I have a question
Yeah.
actually related to trauma and compassion and the justice system. Is the move? What are the trends about with restorative justice, and how is that informed by what you're talking about regarding trauma and compassion?
The question about restorative justice and how that kind of pales with having compassion and dealing with trauma. Most times, if restorative justice is something separate, by the time it gets to my courtroom, we're not addressing it directly. So it's important that all of us who are presiding over cases, that we have the proper training in trauma and talking about trauma, that we understand that, and that we are trauma informed, so we can really assist those parents and people that appear before us on a daily basis. But the restorative part happens before it ever comes before the court.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Belcher, for your presentation today and for all of your work. We are donating a book in your honor through our Rotary Rosie Reader Van through the Des Moines Public Library Foundation. Last year, our Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation donated $40,000 to purchase this van through our community grant program. Upcoming meetings here at the Embassy Club. Please think about somebody you know who may enjoy hearing one of our speakers and invite them to Rotary and invite them to join our club. Just a reminder that you and any guests need to be registered by 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. So on May 26th, we have Nora King, who is our outbound Rotary Youth Exchange student. She will be sharing her experience abroad during a pandemic. And I will be in Germany with Michael Herdley, one of our other Rotary Youth Exchange students during that time, so I'm going to miss Nora. But you won't. You will be here. June 2nd, Bill Fenley, ISU women's basketball coach. For all of you sports fans, even if you are an Iowa fan, come to the meeting. You can deal with it for an hour. So June 2nd, Bill Fenley. And then June 9th, we do not meet. The Embassy Club cannot host us that day, but there is the golf outing the next day on the 10th. So please sign up if you are at all a golfer, or it's best ball, right? So even if you're not a golfer, you can still participate and have fun in best ball. So be sure to sign up for that. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being part of Rotary Club of Des Moines. We are adjourned.